What is up, fellow sickos and apparently hardwoodies? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the one, the only, the certified fantabulous, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are entering the final stretch post-draft of our offseason look-aheads for every single team. We have 3 more to get to as you're watching this, and we're on to the Toronto Raptors. Fun team to talk about, or maybe a confusing team to talk about, I should say. Grant, before we belly flop in, how the heck are you?
I'm confused. Let's unconfuse ourselves. The Raptors are as you described them.
So, sort of my just overarching question for them is, what is the end game? Not overall, but this season. They haven't gotten prohibitively expensive, but they're not cheap. The Brandon Ingram trade sends mixed messages. Like, were they being opportunistic, but then they extended him for like the 3 years and 120, whatever it ended up being. They were heavily involved, at least tangentially, in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. And the roster, you look at it, has a lot of talent, but also this overlap and some redundancies. My gut thing before we dive into their vitals, or my gut feeling is, this is a team that's clearly trying to accelerate its position in the East, Grant. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's more open-ended than that?
No, I think I would mostly agree with that, and you can sort of trace that back to like what their return package was for OG Anunoby. Remember, they go quickly and Barrett as the headliners, and that wasn't the pick-heavy package that maybe they could have gotten elsewhere. So I think you're right, and I would say like, weren't they the team that we used to just like, it became a bit of saying like pick a direction? Were they like high on the list of teams we used to say that about all the time?
I don't know if I did. Maybe you did, because I was so Project 6ix9ine pilled.
Yeah. Okay.
But so I might have been high. I think.
Well, there was that was their defining feature for a long time. It felt like, I think they're hard to figure out. They, like you said, they have considerable talent. Like, there's real starting level talent, and maybe Barnes is quite a bit better than that, and maybe Ingram even is better than that. But do you feel though that it's just like it's good, not great? And I just don't know how it becomes great other than maybe Scotty Barnes is a high-volume 40% three-point shooter or something like that.
That's like I hate going back to the shooting for him, but he does so much else well already that it's like if he hits his pull-up jumper at a more consistent clip or starts shooting 38% on like 5 3-point attempts per game or something, it completely changes the trajectory of this team, which if the margin for popping is kind of that small, it's almost a good thing, but it's also, as you're sitting here, and I tend to consider myself a Scotty Barnes optimist, I don't know that you can say, like the Raptors clearly have like the best player on what would be a team that can contend to come out of the East over the next few years.
Right. I think that, that's again, it's the good, not great. And it's just like, how do you change that? And look, parity is the thing now, and especially in the East. So maybe very good is enough to catch the right kind of run, and you do a Pacers. But like, I don't know. Let's get into kind of the nuts and bolts here.
The final hindsight is 2020 thing is the Pelicans giving up that Pacers pick looks egregious, but when you trace it back to the Raptors giving up that Pacers pick and the Brandon Ingram trade, that's one that's a missed opportunity. Either as a trade asset or you couldn't have known that was going to happen to Halliburton. But that's
what are you going to do?
That's a weird what if. Yeah, Their vitals. Did you wanna take us through this team's vitals?
Happy to. So they are in the tax and just about $3.5 million under the first apron, and those calculations include new, as we discussed on the draft pod, seemingly ill-fitting Colin Murray Boyles and all the non-guaranteed deals. That doesn't include, though, Chris Boucher's free agent hold. Do you want to just start talking about Chris Boucher right now, or should we go through the rest of the vitals here?
Do you think he gets the max or just close to it?
I mean, if you're the only Canadian to win a title for the Raptors, I say yes. Can he get the 30% escalator? Is that possible if you're not on a rookie scale?
Can you include language that gives him 45% of the cap when he wins Defensive Player of the Year?
Or like just a couple All NBAs. I don't know.
I hope we have first-time watchers and listeners that have no idea why this is a bit.
Yeah, I hope this gets cut and just aggregated and sent around. I mean, Chris Boucher's people should be all over this in negotiations.
They're going to bring this clip to negotiations and be like, all right.
Well, so if it is not the max, the Raptors also have probably the mini mid-level $5.7 million. They could access that without cutting any salary. What do you think? Well, is he back? And what do you think that looks like contract wise if he is? And look, hey, shooting. We'll mention it again. One of the things Chris Boucher can do is shoot, and the Raptors need that, especially up front. So like you would think he's someone they should prioritize, but I just don't know if there's a number that's going to make sense for everybody involved.
Doesn't it feel like maybe a 2-year, like a 1+1 at the mid level, so 14.1 million, and then the escalator raise, or maybe 2 for 30 or something, just because that's a very movable contract, especially if it's expiring. And I think you could say that they have other contracts, if you look at Barrett, if you look at Poeltl, that are easy to move. But if you value those players more long term, you need that. You don't have like that Bruce Brown salary slot anymore, right? Or the Kelly Olynyk of just like these expendable players. And I don't think Chris Boucher is expendable, because you mentioned it's a bit, but it's also, you just meant the front court right now. Like, yeah, you would need his stretch at the 4 or the 5.
It's a bit born out of the truth a little bit. So a couple other things here. They have all their own future firsts. They can trade up to 4 of those this summer. And I guess that's 5 if you count the guy they just drafted, Murray Boyles. You probably have this on a slide if you're watching, but like they've been mentioned in a lot of, the Giannis stuff seemed just as real as any Giannis stuff ever got so far this summer. And the KD stuff we mentioned earlier, they do seem ambitious. And so that's why I wonder about someone like Boucher. Is it just like, well, I don't know, are their sights set on bigger things and they'll circle back to someone we believe is the most important player on the roster?
Well, so before we get into the extension eligible guys, I actually think that whether it's him or if you were able to open up the full mid-level for somebody to use on an outside free agent, wouldn't there be value? Like, let's say they're just saving their powder at this point for Giannis, maybe next summer, which they could, in theory, do. Mm-hmm. Having that extra salary on the books that you attach to, okay, who are you sending out, but to make the math work without having to give up, maybe if you're going to the Bucks and you wind up giving them, you prefer to give up draft equity rather than one of a Quickly and a Barnes, and I'm just naming like the more expensive players. Now, if you feel that Ingram and Barnes and Poeltl and RJ Barrett and all those guys are just sort of not interchangeable but expendable, you don't need that like to make Chris Boucher a priority. But I actually think that if you're looking to make a bigger trade, he can either be used in a mid-end trade by himself to match salary, or he kind of gets you over the math hump in one of those bigger deals.
Yeah, and then again, like I feel like I've had this thought about a lot of players. Boucher is kind of like right in that pocket of where I think you're going to have to go mid-level or better because somebody out there is probably going to offer that or something. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge glut of guys. I mean, maybe not, but you know what I mean? That feels like a thought I keep having over and over as we get deeper into the offseason.
Yeah, I've wondered, is he if he's just on the open market, do you think that he falls into the bigger mid-level? Maybe not getting all of it, but does he get more than the mini MLE of 5.7 from another team?
I think so. And I'm not we're not doing a bit anymore. Like I think he is like the mid-level. It would give me some pause, the full mid-level, but the mini mid-level is like, no, a guy that can block shots and make threes as the center is like, that's more than a $5.7 million player to me.
Our first extension candidate for them, I would think, is also their most important. Ochai Agbaji can sign his rookie scale extension. These are the max numbers just for reference. So when we're talking about throwing out other numbers, 4 years and 190.5 or 5 years and 246.7, they could include the All-NBA escalator that gets him to 5 and 296 if they want. How much? It's a twofold question I have for you, Grant. How much do you think he's worth if you were to sign him to an extension? And are you okay signing him and then effectively taking him off the table for trade talks this season because of the way that the poison pill provision works?
So that is an interesting aspect of it that I hadn't given a ton of thought. Actually, there's a prediction piece that we're collaborating on that will probably long since have come out when this episode goes up. But like, I think he's someone that the 3-and-D seems to be there. He's a little undersized for that position, so not perfect. But he's also a guy that like was traded 18 months into his rookie scale contract for basically the Jazz basically said, we just rather have another first rounder instead of you. So it's like, he's been kind of close to not being out of the league, but like being someone that the team essentially, like he wasn't the main part of that deal between Utah and Toronto. It felt more like a throw-in, and it felt like, oh, that's like a low moment for his stock. I say all that to just sort of contextualize, like he might be someone that's like, if you offered him 4 for 40 or 4 for 45 or something, like that would feel low. but he's also been close to like this could be it, or like like really slipping down into like you're a minimum guy after this rookie scale deal's over. So I do think he could be had, and if I'm Toronto, I'm very much interested in like anything up to like 4 for $60 at this point. I don't know if he would sign that, because if he has another year like last year, then he probably just beats that number in restricted free agency. What do you think? Like he's a hard guy to evaluate though, because there's kind of some competing factors.
Yeah, I'm also not like fully used to what are the 3-and-D like plus not much else guys going to get. And part of me is like, would you say no to $20 million a year? And that's so. If he's making $20 million in, what does this extension kick in? 2026, 2027. So like, what is that in terms of the $170 million?
That's like 12%.
Honestly, that's probably I might let it go into restricted free agency. If like the 4 for $60, maybe 4 for $70, I might just pounce if I'm Toronto. Anything above that, what we know about restricted free agency so far is that even teams with cap space mostly steer clear of them. So I would probably be like, okay, if you have a good year and you can make more, or we have to match an offer sheet, so be it. And I might prefer to keep the trade optionality open, because at 4 for $80 or even 4 for $75, it feels like that deal is less likely to turn into team friendly.
I don't know. I think what the more I think about it, and I think they lowball him, and then he probably says no, and then you just use restricted free agency as the tool that it's supposed to be. I think maybe that's my likeliest outcome here.
Would you, before we move on, if they 4 for $70, if that gets him to sign, would you do that as the Raptors, or would you prefer to wait for RFA at that? Because you mentioned 4 for $60.
I think I might wait.
Okay.
I think if I'm Toronto, I'm doing like 4 for 45 or 4 for 40, wow, just to see.
He's been up and down, to your point.
That's what I mean. So, like he might, that life-changing money, you lock in $40 million. Like I'm very much persuaded by like there was a minute there where it was like, I don't know if this guy's going to stick. And maybe that's something that motivates him to take a lower offer.
RJ Barrett's extension, I think we can run through the next two pretty quickly because I feel it's just something to keep an eye on. But his new deal, he signed an extension. New deal will kick in during his 2027-2028 season, at which time he'd be age 27. As of right now, he can sign for up to 3 years and $143.3 million, which would take him through 2030, 2031. This doesn't, like, I'd be shocked if he got an extension. I don't know where you're at. Maybe the number's lower. This is just the max that they could offer him. Maybe it's lower than that, but I don't know what you would want that would, okay, yeah, we want to be in the RJ Barrett business for the next half decade.
Right. I don't think he's the caliber of player you do that for, especially now with the apron era. And I think like how bad is it if he's almost a $30 million expiring salary in 26-27? Like I don't feel like that's a bad outcome if you're the Raptors.
And then if he pops this year for some reason under whatever context you want to frame it as, you could just extend him then like on a 4-year extension. He probably still signs it. Like looking at what the money is annually here, I don't think you're in danger of seeing him price himself out of extension talks.
No, right. I agree.
Jakob Poeltl also falls under this as well with a little rogue like yellow thing behind his image. I don't know what I did there.
Why is a post-it note on Jakob Poeltl's jersey?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I
good.
did. So he can extend so he kind of has a couple options because he does have that player option at the end of his deal that Barrett doesn't. So as of right now, you could extend him for 3 years and $88.5 million. Then that would kick in during 2027, 2028. But if he declines his player option for 26, 27, you could extend him for 4 years and $122.3 million. I don't think he should sign an extension like for the full years. I'm not saying they have to give him the max here. Would take him like through his age 34 season potentially. They seem very married to Jakob Poeltl. They didn't want to include him for Kevin Durant. They gave up what was that, the number 8 pick to get him back. And there's been like some rumblings that they might just extend him. To me, I'm just wait, guys. Like, let's see what this roster looks like together before you decide that Jakob, who's, I want to make it clear, is very good, very useful, especially on offense. But I think there's going to maybe come a point where they need a different look at center defensively.
He's kind of another example of the good, not great issue here, where it's like you're fine if Jakob Poeltl's your starting center. You're probably not fine if you're paying him what we're talking, like those max numbers we have up there. That's like I don't know what kind of roster you're building out if you're maxing. Even max is like means 50 different things, but like Poeltl is just not someone that can make a huge chunk and you'll be a very good team. That's an oversimplification, but that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Is there any number for him where it would make where if he was like, I'll sign for 3 and 45? Does that just give you a bite?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that'd be fine because that's a lower. I mean, that's less than he's making now and next year, and the cap's going up. So I'm good. I mean, also you've got his age 34 season in 29-30. So this coming up is age 30, this season. So why are we like? We must assume that he's going to have some decline in there too, and he's not a guy that can lose, a half a step and still be like, oh, he's great. That's just not where he.
Would you do it for net neutral money, where it's like he still wants the 19.5 per year for let's say 3?
With the cap going up, you could probably talk me into that. Just because it really is like less money, relative to how much you're allowed to spend. But I'm not giving him a raise. I don't think. Maybe that's the simplest way to put it.
If the past is prologue, though, they probably are going to extend him and give him a raise.
They do really like him. I mean, he seems like a great locker room guy. I guess maybe. I mean, it's stuff we don't know.
Of the 3 primary extension eligible players, Agbaji, Poeltl, and Barrett, who do you think is most likely to get one?
Probably Poeltl, just because he's the guy.
Logic would dictate it's Agbaji, just because the rookie scale stuff, but it feels like it would be Poeltl too, right?
He's never getting away. They did it once, not again.
All right, so now we get into just kind of like the meat and potatoes of their offseason, and there are some notes on screen if you're watching. What do you, Mr. Grant Hughes, view as their single biggest need?
It has to be shooting. And I'm open to the idea, like I joked about it, but I think Barnes can be better, even though that's like not the thing you have him out there to do as like option 1. And I think Ingram, maybe the volume will be there finally. I don't know. Maybe after so many years.
It kind of was last year, right?
Well, that's what I mean. It was it was a career high. I forget what the number was. Maybe close to 6 attempts a game. Just I don't have my proprietary 3-point attempts per game up in front of me, but for memory serves, it was more than he'd ever shot. And like quickly there's like upside, like maybe Grady Dick, just, in addition to some of the playmaking flashes we saw like 2 off seasons ago is just going to be a knockdown guy. There's ways forward, but I still am just like, you need someone out there maybe Agbaji like replicates what he did. It's still a need until it isn't. Like maybe this will, next summer we'll have a different take, but that's really it. And then secondarily, like, are we like, what do you think about the playmaking between Quickly and Barnes? Are we good there? Because that's related to the shooting issue too. Can you generate enough good ones for your subpar shooters to just be more productive than the percentages suggest? That's kind of a related thing.
I still feel like they could maybe use like a floor general type, not in the starting lineup, but just to manage the game when you're not going to have these multiple ball handlers. Unlike if you're going to start to stagger Ingram and Barnes and Barrett and Quickly, you could use just sort of the names that'll come up will be like Tyus Jones or just someone to come in and manage the game. But I also recognize that like having a bunch of on-ball decision makers who maybe aren't A-plus passers, but they're good enough, like you can figure out Oklahoma City is a perfect example. They don't have, and their offense goes through these peaks and valleys, but like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is fantastic, and he's better as a playmaker than I think anyone on the Raptors, but they don't have like an A++ passer in the rotation right now.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that, though, like the Raptors' defense could be a strength, but it isn't going to be what the Thunder's was, and so if you do have those playmaking issues where it's like, point to the really, really great passer on the Raptors roster, like just like you can't really point to that person on the Thunder's, it matters more if your offense is hamstrung in that way if your defense isn't like the greatest of all time. So like I do think they just don't. I mean, newsflash: the Raptors don't have the margin for error that the Thunder do offensively. So I know you don't like me to break news, but I just did.
It also feels like the other thing too. They could use like better rim protection, just because right now you're looking at Poeltl just as a rim protector. He had those really good seasons in San Antonio, but since then has fallen off. Do you believe in Mogbo to like take any of that? There's Chris Boucher if you bring him back. I know they have Colin Murray-Boyles now, but it just feels like they could use a reserve big at least. I mean, I'd actually prefer it to come from the starting center, to be honest, but that's another need that and ideally you would figure out a way to check that box in one, but I don't know, are you getting Al Horford or Brook Lopez or Miles Turner in free agency? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, we already hit on the game manager guard.
Well,
I don't know. I feel like I know we're doing needs here, but like there's quite a bit to like here, just because they're gonna have like plus players pretty deep down the rotation, just in general. If we're talking ceiling, I don't know how high that is.
I think if you had to isolate it to like this is something they need to do, because you're right, they are deep, and just like if Grady Dick continues to get better, if Jamal Shed gets better, maybe you hit on Jacoby Walter. I think what they need though is, of all the players, I think of every single player we've mentioned, Agbaji, Barnes, like Quickly is the most bankable shooter on this team, and you might have like maybe Brandon Ingram has sort of a high floor and then questionable ceiling in that department. I think they just need to come in here, like get someone to come in here, and even if he's not one of your top 6 guys, just can get up threes and make threes. Like, can you get? Yeah, they can't get Malik Beasley. They're not going to bring back Gary Trent. They can't afford him anyway, probably. But like Sam Merrill or Luke Kennard, like just taking a flyer on Lindy Waters, it feels like, again, because as you mentioned, they have so much talent. I'm open to the idea that maybe this team can just be better. And one of my questions here, like, unless you just have any other names, like to see them, like. I guess I have 2 questions. It starts with, before getting into will they be involved in a big trade, is do you think people are overthinking, including us, the redundancies on this roster when you're looking at the Barnes, the Barrett, the Poeltl of it all in terms of the space that they all want to occupy?
No, I don't. I think that's a real issue that is again, like, all the talent. The talent it's a high level of talent. The fit is not great, especially now that you're introducing Murray Boyles, who, like, I know he's a rookie and like he wasn't going to be, odds are he wasn't going to be a helpful player anyway, at least this year. But like, there's a lot of guys that occupy the same space, and it's going to be difficult to sort of create some room to breathe, I think, unless something changes. And I also think the fact that they have been, you want to be ambitious, but the fact that they've been involved in talks regarding like big name players suggests that they kind of also think that, like, as constructed, I don't know if this is going to work, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I don't think that's an unfair conclusion to jump to.
No, not at all. So I guess my question to you is, let's just assume we know KD is now off the table. Let's say Giannis is off the table. Is there any sort of star that could technically become available that would move you as the Raptors to think again about, all right, yeah, looking at future picks, some of these salaries here, I can start throwing names at you. So as an example, one would be if he becomes available, which the way this team is operating, I'm assuming not, Trae Young. Like, that's not a name I'm looking at. But what if, again, doesn't look like he's going to come available, like, what if LaMelo Ball?
That was the name I was going to, like, because then you're talking about the volume shooting and then the floor general aspect of it. Like Ja was another name, but like that's not going to help shooting. Yeah, and I don't think that's the right way to go. And then like you can't really assume Quickly would probably be going out, but I don't like those two together.
What about I don't know. A Kobe White team? That's a pretty easy salary to match.
Kobe White's going to be the guy that we go like, well, if that top tier's not there, he'd be pretty good. I think he's going to fit a lot. He'll come up more than once probably, and it already has. I like Kobe White there. I'm trying to think like,
what about Derek White?
Oh, I'm happy to send Derek White
does
anywhere.
Does he do enough of everything that they need, though? Because that's not an all-in trade, but that's, you've given up the equivalent of multiple first-round picks and a salary at that point.
No, but he is just purely additive because he would give you the spacing, and he has proved to be someone that he can get them up at high volume if that's what you want him to do. I don't know if that's the best use of Derek White. He is not going to be the guy that runs lots and lots of pick and rolls like that. Is in control of the offense, I don't think. But yeah, like. It's a pretty small crop, right? Like Trae Young, LaMelo are like even like maybe available types that would
those
tick the
teams
boxes
just kind of signaled
about.
That that's
right.
Not like the, right. Yeah, so,
yeah.
I don't like. Would they be if for some reason the Heat pivot? Like, are they a Tyler Hero team? Is that too redundant with Emmanuel Quickly?
I mean, you could, the issue with him is he's going to get targeted a lot, and I guess you've got some of the defensive infrastructure to mitigate that. Is he someone that you want like at the controls all the time? I know he had a great scoring season, but I don't know if he's the guy either.
I think if you're keeping Barnes and Quickly, like you just have enough of than if you're adding Hero. I would feel better about like if Ingram, whether he's still there or not. Like I feel better about that passing trio than I do Ingram, Quickly, Barnes. If that's more of a how I feel about Ingram type. They also could like star bit. Like what if Karl Anthony Towns was available? That's a lot of money, but for what this team could use on offense.
I mean, between him and Ingram, do we have the two guys that we've begged to shoot more threes on the same over the last few years on the same roster?
Right.
Like, I mean, the theory of Cat would make sense. Like, oh, he's going to space the floor. Like, so different from Poeltl in almost every way. But if he's like, you just have to like in the trade call, there has to be like a caveat that like you must shoot 8 threes a game, or this is rescinded forever, and you have to go play in the Philippines. Like, that's or something. I don't know.
Yeah, do you have any other names that are worth talking? Like, it feels like...
I mean, Chris Boucher probably would be one I would look at pretty hard.
We already talked about maxing him out, but yeah. I think if I were them, I'm still trying to improve on the margins, and I already see myself talking myself into this team, like when we go back and do the offseason, like the as currently constructed. But I'm just trying to improve like the shooting, the spacing on the margins, maybe getting a better rim protect, like no one that breaks the bank. And I'm kind of saving like because they have a lot of assets and movable salary. I am waiting for that next no-brainer guy to come of it. Like what if it's Giannis? What if it's Jaren Jackson Jr.? I know the rebounding would be pretty bad, but like he would make a lot of sense on this team. It just feels like that's the route they should go, and maybe they were trying to be more opportunistic by being involved for Kevin Durant. I mean, look at what he ultimately went for. Maybe they thought that they could get him for number 9 and Barrett and like other salaries they didn't want. Although the structure of any deal like almost felt like it had to be 2 of their core salaries for the most part.
And it makes me wonder why maybe they were and we didn't hear about it. They should have been in on Desmond Bane. Because you could put together something similar to what Orlando did. I mean, if you're willing to put those picks on the table, I think Toronto might be less willing to give up unprotecteds in the future than Orlando, because Orlando's got a little bit more of a track record. But like Bane is someone that there's your 3-point volume that and he can actually like, would he be the best pick and roll playmaker on the team? It'd be close. Like.
They don't have the Naz Reid would make a lot of sense here in a sign and trade, but then you got to get under the first apron, which I guess is somewhat doable for them. That would be an interesting name if they could get him, and that shouldn't cost you everything. What about this is an everything guy? I don't know if he does enough of it defensively, sure, but the rim protection, the space, like Bam Adebayo, like if the Heat just completely pivot.
He would. I think he's also 6'9".
He feels like a Toronto player, right?
He does feel like a Toronto player, yeah.
You have anything else on this team? I think they have the chance to be really interesting this offseason, but they are sufficiently confusing as hell.
Yeah, they need you know what? We haven't trotted this one out yet. I think they need a player that's better than anyone they currently have, and that's to like really make noise. And that's why they were on the Durant and Giannis trail for a minute there, because I think they know that. But yeah, I don't know. That's all I got on them. I think they'll be good. I do. Like I think they're going to be a 500 or better and be in the play-in or lower playoff rungs picture. I just don't know how they move past that. Maybe that's organic improvement.
I think it's Scotty Barnes, and I think he's capable of it. But the thing I would harp on the most, if you wanted him to go kaboom, is like get some more bankable spacing around him. Like that's the thing that I feel like he really needs to be optimized within.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, giving us thumbs up, commenting on YouTube. Let us know what you think. Let us know if we have mischaracterized the Raptors as good, not great, if that feels unfair. But I feel pretty strongly. Remember, tell your friends, tell your enemies. Join our Discord. Links for that in YouTube and podcast description. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.